Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his morning coffee when the strangest message of his life arrived. He sat in the command chair of the UES Discovery, watching the stars through the main window. The ship was 3 months into a routine exploration. Mission near the edge of known space. Nothing exciting ever happened out here, which was exactly how Jake liked it, the communication officer. Kate Sullivan looked up from her station with a confused expression. "Captain, we're getting a transmission on a frequency I've never seen before. It's not from Earth Command." Jake set down his coffee cup. "Pirates?" "No, sir. This is something else entirely. The signal is incredibly advanced. Whatever sent this has technology far beyond anything we have." Lieutenant Amy Collins, the ship's biologist, turned from her science station. "Captain, I'm reading energy signatures that don't match any known human technology. This could be our first contact with an alien species." Jake felt his heart rate increase. First contact was every space explorer's dream and nightmare rolled into one. "Put it on screen, Kate." The main display flickered and then showed something that made everyone on the bridge go silent. A tall, thin creature with blue-gray skin and 4 arms stood in what looked like an elegant room. Its head was larger than a human's, with 2 large, black eyes that seemed to look directly at Jake. When it spoke, the words came through perfectly in English. "Greetings, humans of the vessel Discovery. I am Vexter, diplomatic representative of the Galactic Survival Council. We have been observing your species for some time and have decided to extend a most prestigious invitation." Commander Peter Hayes, Jake's second-in-command, stepped closer to the screen. "How do you know our language?" Vexter's mouth curved in what might have been a smile. "We have studied many species across the galaxy. Language is rarely a barrier once you understand the basic patterns of thought. But let me continue with why I have contacted you." Jake nodded slowly. "We're listening." The Galactic Survival Council oversees the most important competition in known space. Every few years, we invite worthy species to participate in the Galactic Survival Championship. This is not merely a contest, humans. It is a test that determines whether a species is ready to join the greater galactic community. Amy Collins moved to stand beside Jake. Her scientific mind was clearly racing. "How many species have participated in this competition?" "Over the past 3,000 Earth years, we have tested 47 different species. Only 12 have proven worthy of membership in the Galactic Federation. The others—" Vexter paused dramatically. "The others were found lacking in the qualities necessary for civilized society." Chief Engineer Lisa Torres spoke up from her station. "What kind of test is this exactly?" Vexter's 4 arms moved in what seemed like a gesture of explanation. "Teams from each species are placed on various challenging worlds. They must survive increasingly difficult situations while demonstrating the core values we prize: tactical thinking, resource management, technological adaptation, and most importantly, the ability to work within established frameworks." Medical Officer Ben Carter frowned. "You said teams? How many people would we need to send?" 12 individuals from your species would be selected. They would face challenges alongside teams from other species, including our current champions, the mighty Korath and the technologically superior Zephyrians. The competition lasts several months and takes place across multiple worlds. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. Every face showed a mixture of excitement and concern. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, but it also sounded incredibly dangerous. "What happens if we refuse?" Peter asked. Vexter's expression became more serious. "Refusal would indicate that your species lacks the courage necessary for galactic citizenship. You would be classified as a developing world and left to evolve on your own for another 1,000 years before being reconsidered." Kate Sullivan turned from her station. "Captain, I'm getting readings that suggest several other ships are nearby, but they're not showing up on our sensors properly. I think this alien has backup." Vexter's large eyes seemed to shine with amusement. "Very perceptive. Yes, we travel with adequate protection, but you have nothing to fear if you accept our invitation honorably." Amy stepped forward. "What are the rules of this competition?" The rules are simple and fair, Vexter replied. Survive whatever challenges are presented. Adapt to new environments using available resources. Overcome obstacles through intelligence and determination. Demonstrate your species' capability to work within civilized parameters. Most importantly, prove that humans can compete with species that have been spacefaring for millennia. Lisa. Torres raised her hand. Are we allowed to help other teams if they're in trouble? Vexter paused for a moment, as if the question confused him. Help ... competitors? That would be unusual. Most species focus on their own survival first. But there is no rule specifically forbidding cooperation, provided it does not interfere with the core challenges. Jake could see his crew exchanging glances. The human instinct to help others, even competitors, was apparently not common among alien species. That was interesting and potentially important information. How long do we have to decide? Jake asked. Your answer is required within 1 Earth day. The competition begins in 2 weeks, which will give us time to transport your chosen team to the first challenge location. Ben Carter spoke up. What kind of medical support is provided? Each team brings their own medical officer. Severe injuries that threaten death will result in emergency evacuation and disqualification. Otherwise, teams must handle medical needs. Independently, Peter crossed his arms. And what exactly do we get if we win this competition? Vexter's expression became more animated. Victory would grant humanity immediate membership in the Galactic Federation. Your people would gain access to advanced technologies, trade relationships with dozens of species, and the right to establish colonies in the Outer Rim systems. It would advance your civilization by perhaps 1,000 years. Jake felt the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. This single choice could change the entire future of humanity. But something about Vexter's manner suggested there was more to this than a simple test. Amy seemed to be thinking along the same lines. Vexter, in 3,000 years of these competitions, have you ever had a species that was too successful? Too good at the challenges? The alien diplomat paused for longer this time. An interesting question. Most species struggle significantly with the challenges we present. The competition is designed to test the limits of what we consider acceptable. Performance for civilized beings. That's not really an answer, Lisa pointed out. Vexter's forearms moved in what might have been a shrug. No species has ever exceeded our expectations to a problematic degree. The challenges are quite carefully calibrated based on extensive observation of species capabilities. Jake noticed that Vexter seemed uncomfortable with Amy's line of questioning. That suggested the aliens had very specific ideas about how this competition should go. Were they expecting humans to fail, or were they expecting humans to succeed in particular ways? We'll need to discuss this among ourselves, Jake said finally. And we'll need to contact Earth Command for authorization, of course. You have. One day we will await your answer. Vexter's image smiled again. I should mention that very few species have ever been invited to participate. Your inclusion indicates that we believe humanity shows great promise. Do not disappoint us. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in complete silence. Jake looked around at his crew, seeing his own mixture of excitement and worry reflected on every face. Well, he said finally, I guess we're not having a boring mission after all. Amy Collins stared at the now empty screen. Captain, I think we need to be very careful about this. Something tells me these aliens have some very specific expectations about how humans should perform. And I'm not sure those expectations are based on what we're actually capable of. Jake nodded slowly. Amy was right to be cautious. But he was also thinking about what Vexter had said about advancing human civilization by 1,000 years. Could they really pass up an opportunity like that? The next 24 hours were going to be very interesting indeed. The transport ship that carried the human team to Zarian Prime was unlike anything they had ever seen. Jake Morrison stood with his 11 teammates in what the aliens called a preparation chamber, watching through a massive window as they approached their destination. The planet below looked like a nightmare version of Earth, with swirling red storms, jagged mountain ranges, and vast deserts that seemed to glow with their own heat. "Well, this looks cheerful," muttered Danny Ross, the team's survival expert. He had spent 15 years in the most dangerous places on Earth, from the Amazon rainforest to the Arctic tundra. Even he looked concerned about what they were seeing. Amy Collins was taking readings with her portable scanner. "The atmosphere is breathable, but barely. High radiation levels, extreme temperature swings, and the local wildlife readings are off the charts. Whatever lives down there is big, fast, and probably very hungry." Lisa Torres adjusted her tool pack for the third time. "At least they're letting us bring basic equipment. Though I have to say, their idea of basic is pretty limited." The alien overseer, a creature called Monitor Quextol, approached their group. Unlike the diplomatic Vexter, this alien was clearly military. Its scaled hide was covered in what looked like ceremonial scars, and its voice carried the tone of someone used to giving orders. "Human team, you will be transported to the surface in 30 minutes. Your starting location has been randomly selected, as have the locations of all other teams. The first challenge period will last 7 days. You must establish a secure base, locate a reliable water source, and signal your location to the monitoring satellites." Van Carter, their medical officer, raised his hand. "What about the other teams? Are we supposed to avoid them or work with them?" Monitor Quextol's expression was hard to read, but there seemed to be surprise in its voice. "Other teams? You are competitors. Focus on your own survival." Kate Sullivan, their communications specialist, looked puzzled. "But what if we encounter a team in trouble? Do we just ignore them?" "That would be the logical approach," the alien replied. "Resources are limited. Helping competitors reduces your own chances of success." Jake saw his team members exchange glances. The idea of ignoring people in danger went against everything humans were taught from childhood. But they were here to represent their entire species, so they needed to be smart about how they handled things. "Understood," Jake said diplomatically. "We'll focus on our own survival first." Monitor Quextol seemed satisfied with this answer. "Good. Remember, you are being observed at all times. Your performance will be measured against established standards for civilized behavior." 20 minutes later, the human team found themselves standing on the surface of Zarian Prime, watching their transport ship disappear into the red-tinged sky. The air was hot and dry, with a metallic taste that made everyone want to cough. The landscape around them was rocky and barren, with strange purple plants growing in scattered patches. "Okay, people," Jake said, looking around at the hostile environment. "Danny, what's our first priority?" Danny Ross was already examining the ground and the surrounding area. "Shelter. The temperature readings Amy got show this place swings from desert heat during the day to freezing cold at night. We need protection from both." Ryan Murphy, their weapons and security specialist, pointed toward a cluster of large rocks about half a mile away. "That outcropping looks defensible. Natural windbreaks, elevated position for observation, and multiple escape routes if something goes wrong." "Good eye," Danny agreed. "Lisa, can you work with those purple plants? They might be useful for something." Lisa. Torres was already kneeling beside one of the strange plants, carefully taking a small sample. "The structure is fascinating. It's like a cross between a cactus and a vine. Very tough fibers, and it seems to store liquid in these bulb sections." Amy Collins ran her scanner over the plant sample. "It's not toxic to humans. In fact, the liquid inside might be drinkable after some basic filtering." The team moved toward the rock formation with practiced efficiency. Jake had specifically chosen people who could work together under stress, and it showed. Within 2 hours, they had established a basic camp in a protected area between several large boulders, but their real test came on the second day, when they encountered the first of Zarian Prime's dangerous wildlife. Kate Sullivan was on watch duty when she spotted movement in the distance. "Contact," she called softly. "Something big moving toward us from the south." Ryan Murphy grabbed his binoculars and studied the approaching shapes. Pack hunters, 6 of them, maybe 7. They look like a cross between wolves and lizards about the size of bears. Danny Ross moved to get a better view. They're tracking. U.S. probably picked up our scent yesterday and have been following us since. The creatures were indeed massive, with thick scaled hides, powerful legs, and mouths full of teeth that glinted in the alien sunlight. They moved with the coordinated precision of experienced pack hunters. Standard procedure would be to find a defensible position and try to scare them off. Then Carter said nervously, Amy Collins was watching the creatures through her scanner. According to the readings I'm getting, these are the apex predators on this planet. They're not easily scared. Jake looked around at his team. In a normal situation, they would set up a defensive perimeter and hope the creatures lost interest. But something about the way these animals moved suggested they had dealt with off-world visitors before. They looked too confident, too purposeful. Ryan, Jake said quietly, how many rounds do we have for the energy weapons they gave us? Limited supply. Maybe enough for one serious fight, but not much more. Danny Ross was studying the pack's movement pattern. They're trying to surround us. Classic hunting behavior. Once they have us trapped, they'll attack from multiple directions. Lisa Torres looked up from where she had been working on improving their shelter. What if we don't let them surround us? What do you mean? Jake asked. What if we attack them? First, take out the pack leader and scatter the rest. Ryan Murphy nodded slowly. Aggressive defense. Hit them before they're ready, disrupt their coordination. Ben Carter looked uncomfortable. That seems pretty violent for what's supposed to be a survival test. Amy Collins was still watching her scanner. Actually, it might be our only choice. These creatures show signs of enhanced intelligence. They're not going to give up and wander away. Jake made the decision that would set the tone for everything that followed. We take them out, all of them. Ryan, you and Danny flank them from the left. Kate and Amy provide support from the high ground. Lisa, Ben, and I will create a distraction from the front. What happened next would have surprised the alien observers. If they had been expecting anything other than a desperate defensive fight. The humans didn't just drive off the pack of predators. They systematically hunted down every single creature with a combination of tactics, teamwork, and ruthless efficiency that was unlike anything the monitoring systems had recorded before. Ryan Murphy used his weapons training to take down the pack leader with a perfect shot, while Danny Ross used improvised traps to separate and confuse the remaining animals. Kate Sullivan coordinated the team's movements with military precision, while Amy Collins used her knowledge of animal behavior to predict where each creature would try to escape, but the real shock came after the fight was over. Instead of simply dragging the dead creatures away from their camp, the humans began a process that left the alien observers completely baffled. Lisa Torres started by carefully skinning the largest creature, preserving the hide for later use. Ben Carter harvested specific organs and muscle tissues, explaining to Amy which parts would be safe to eat and which might have medicinal properties. Danny Ross used the bones and claws to create improved tools and weapons. Within 6 hours, the human team had converted a pack of deadly predators into clothing, food, medicine, tools, and weapons. They wasted absolutely nothing, and every part of each creature was put to productive use. Monitor Quextol, watching from the orbiting command ship, turned to his fellow observers with obvious confusion. This level of resource utilization is far beyond normal parameters. Most species barely survive encounters with Zarian pack hunters. These humans appear to have treated them as a supply delivery. But the humans weren't finished surprising their watchers. On the third day, they detected another team in serious trouble, the Thakari team. Small furry creatures known for their intelligence and resourcefulness had become trapped in a canyon during one of Zarian Prime's sudden flash floods. Their distress signal was weak and intermittent, but Kate Sullivan had picked it up during a routine communication check. They're about 12 miles from here, Kate reported. Sounds like they're injured and running out of supplies. Jake looked at his team. They had plenty of food now, thanks to their encounter with the pack hunters. Their shelter was secure, and they had already located 2 reliable water sources. By any measure, they were ahead of schedule on all the required objectives. "We go?" "Help them," Jake said simply. Ryan Murphy nodded. "I'll grab the medical supplies and some extra food." "I'll bring rope and climbing gear," Danny added. "If they're trapped in a canyon, they'll need help getting out." Monitor Quextol watched in growing amazement as the human team abandoned their secure position. The ice world of Glacius Beta was supposed to be the challenge that separated the truly capable species from the merely lucky ones. Jake Morrison stood with his team on a frozen plateau, watching their breath-form clouds in the bitter cold air. The temperature readings showed -40 degrees, with wind speeds that could knock a person off their feet. "Well, this is definitely different from the desert," Danny Ross said, adjusting his improvised cold weather gear. The survival expert had spent the past 3 days creating insulated clothing from materials they had gathered during their time. On Zarian Prime. Amy Collins was taking readings of their new environment. "The atmosphere is thinner here, and the radiation from the local star is much weaker. We're looking at short days and very long nights. Plus, the local wildlife appears to be mostly underground." Lisa Torres was already examining the strange ice formations around them. "This isn't normal water ice. There are mineral deposits frozen into it and some kind of organic compounds. It might actually be useful as a building material." The alien transport had dropped all the surviving teams at different locations across the ice planet. Out of the original 13 teams, 11 remained. The Veltari had been eliminated during the second challenge when their entire team succumbed to a local disease, and one of the Korath teams had suffered too many injuries to continue. Monitor Quextol had briefed them before the drop. "This challenge will test your ability to adapt to extreme environments while maintaining team cohesion. You must survive for 10 days, establish communication with at least 2 other teams, and demonstrate effective resource management in a scarcity environment." What the monitor hadn't mentioned was that the other teams were struggling badly with the harsh conditions. The human team discovered this on their second day when Kate Sullivan picked up multiple distress signals. "Captain, I'm getting emergency transmissions from at least 4 different teams," Kate reported. "The Zephyrians are reporting equipment failures. The Korath team sounds like they're dealing with frostbite. And there's a very weak signal that might be the Helix Consortium team, but I can barely make it out." Jake looked around at his team. They had established a comfortable base camp using Lisa's ice construction techniques. Danny had created efficient heating systems using local materials and some basic chemistry. Ben Carter had developed treatments for cold weather injuries by studying local plant life that somehow survived the harsh conditions. "We can't help everyone at once," Peter Hayes pointed out. "And moving around in this weather is dangerous even for us." Ryan Murphy was studying the tactical situation. "The smart play would be to help the closest team first, then work our way to the others if we can." But Amy Collins had been thinking about the bigger picture. "What if we don't just help them one at a time? What if we bring them all together?" Jake raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Look at our situation. We've got effective shelter, reliable heat, and adequate food supplies. Instead of going to each team separately, what if we guide them all here? Create a central base where everyone can survive?" Ben Carter nodded slowly. "It would be more efficient. Shared resources, shared knowledge, better medical care for anyone who's injured." Danny Ross was already thinking through the logistics. "We'd need to expand our shelter significantly. And we'd have to establish supply lines to support more people." "Lisa," Torres grinned, "I can work with the local ice to build much larger structures. The mineral content actually makes it stronger than regular ice when you process it correctly." Kate Sullivan looked up from her communications equipment. "I can establish a network to coordinate everyone's movement toward our location. Guide them along safe routes." Jake realized his team was proposing something that went far beyond the stated challenge requirements. They weren't just planning to survive or even to help individual teams. They were planning to create a rescue and coordination center for the entire competition. "Monitor Quextol is going to have some interesting things to say about this," Jake sighed. "Let him," Amy replied. "Nothing we're doing violates the stated rules." We're supposed to survive, establish communication, and manage resources effectively. This does all three better than anything else we could try. The next 6 days turned into the most complex logistics operation any of them had ever undertaken. The human team transformed their simple base camp into what Danny Ross jokingly called the Glacius Beta Hilton. Lisa Torres used her engineering skills to construct interconnected ice domes that could house over 50 people comfortably. She discovered that by adding certain local minerals to the ice and heating it in specific ways, she could create building materials that were stronger than concrete and perfectly insulated against the cold. Kate Sullivan established a communication network that allowed all the surviving teams to coordinate their movements and share information about local conditions. Her improvised relay system used salvaged equipment and local mineral deposits to create signal boosters that worked better than the standard alien communication gear. Ben Carter set up a medical facility that combined human medical knowledge with treatments derived from local resources. He had discovered that several of the plants growing in underground cave systems had remarkable healing properties when prepared correctly. Danny Ross created a supply chain that kept everyone fed and warm. His teams ranged across the ice planet, hunting the local wildlife and gathering useful materials. More importantly, he taught members of other alien teams how to survive in the harsh environment using techniques that their own species had never developed, but it was Amy Collins who made the breakthrough that changed everything. While studying the local ecosystem, she discovered that the underground cave networks were much more extensive than anyone had realized. More than that, she found evidence of ancient technology buried deep in the ice. "Jake, you need to see this," Amy called over the communication system. She was 3 miles from the main base, exploring a cave system with Ryan Murphy and 2 members of the Thakari team. "What did you find?" "I think it's some kind of ancient facility. The construction is definitely artificial, and there are energy readings that suggest it might still be partially functional." Jake felt his pulse quicken. "Are you saying there's lost alien technology down there?" "That's exactly what I'm saying. And from the design, I think it predates any of the species currently in the Galactic Federation." The discovery of the ancient facility changed the entire dynamic of the challenge. Jake led a joint expedition that included members from 6 different alien teams. What they found was a vast underground complex that had been frozen in ice for thousands of years. The facility contained technology that was more advanced than anything the Galactic Federation currently possessed. There were power systems that generated energy from the planet's core, environmental controls that could regulate temperature and atmosphere across huge areas, and most remarkably, a central computer system that still contained data about the civilization that had built it. Lisa Torres was the first to figure out how to interface with the ancient systems. "The basic principles are similar to our own technology, just much more sophisticated. I think I can establish a basic connection without damaging anything." Amy Collins worked with the alien team members to translate the data they were accessing. According to these records, this facility was built by a species called the Archivists. They seem to have been explorers and scientists, traveling from world to study and preserve knowledge. The most shocking discovery came when they accessed the Archivists' records about other species. The database contained detailed information about dozens of civilizations, including several that were currently members of the Galactic Federation. "Look at this," Amy said, pointing to a data display. The archivists studied the Korath over 2,000 years ago. According to their notes, the Korath were much more advanced then, but they seem to have lost much of their technology over time. Jake studied the information with growing amazement. "Are you saying that some of these advanced species were actually more capable in the past?" "That's exactly what I'm saying. And look at this entry about the Zephyrians." The archivists note that their technological development was heavily influenced by contact with other species. They weren't as independently innovative as everyone believes. Peter Hayes was looking at another section of the database. "There's information here about species that were never invited to join the Galactic Federation. Some of them had capabilities that seemed to exceed current Federation standards. The implications were staggering. The Galactic Federation's understanding of species development and capability was based on incomplete information. They had been making decisions about which species were worthy of membership based on assumptions that were thousands of years out of date, but the real breakthrough came when Ryan Murphy discovered the facility's manufacturing systems. The ancient technology could produce tools, weapons, and equipment that surpassed anything in the current galaxy. More importantly, the systems were designed to teach users how to build and maintain the technology themselves. "This changes everything," Jake said as he watched Lisa Torres successfully activate one of the manufacturing units. "We're not just finding lost technology." The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council was unlike anything seen in over 1,000 years. High Arbiter Quellennox stood at the center of the Great Chamber, his usually calm demeanor replaced by obvious anxiety. Around him, representatives from dozens of species watched recordings of the human team's activities, with expressions ranging from confusion to outright alarm. "Show them the statistics again," Quellennox ordered, the holographic display filled with numbers that made several council members shift uncomfortably in their seats. Human survival rate, 100%. Resource efficiency, 340% above previous records. Technology adaptation, off the scale. Cooperation index, so high it broke the measurement system. Commander Zareth of the Korath stood up, his warrior pride clearly wounded. "These numbers are impossible. No species achieves perfect survival rates while simultaneously helping competitors. It violates basic survival logic." Representative Valthus of the Zephyrians was studying the technical reports. "More concerning are these equipment modifications. The humans have improved upon our standard survival gear using primitive materials. Some of their innovations exceed our own engineering capabilities. And they discovered the Archivist facility," added Council Member Thexara of the Helix Consortium. "Not only discovered it, but successfully accessed systems that have remained sealed for 3,000 years. They accomplished in 3 days what our best archaeologists have been trying to do for decades." High Arbiter Quellennox activated another display, but the most disturbing aspect is their complete disregard for the competitive framework. "Look at this." The hologram showed the human base camp on Glacius Beta. Instead of a simple survival shelter, it looked like a small city. Representatives from 8 different species were working together, sharing resources and knowledge under human coordination. The supposed competition had been transformed into a cooperative research expedition. "They have essentially turned our survival championship into a diplomatic conference," Quellennox continued. "Species that have been rivals for centuries are now working side by side because the humans convinced them it was more effective than competing." Monitor Quextol stepped forward from where he had been standing at attention. "High Arbiter, I have observed these humans closely. They do not seem to understand that helping competitors reduces their own chances of success. When I explained this to their leader, he looked at me as if I was speaking nonsense." "Because to them it is nonsense," said a new voice. Everyone turned to see Dr. Kethrai, the Federation's leading specialist in species psychology. The elderly scientist rarely spoke in council meetings, but when he did, everyone listened. "I've been studying the human psychological profiles since they arrived," Dr. Kethrai continued. "Their behavior makes perfect sense once you understand their fundamental assumptions about survival and success." High Arbiter Quellennox gestured for the scientist to continue. "Explain." "Most species view survival as a zero-sum game. Resources are limited, so helping others reduces your own chances. But humans operate on a completely different principle. They believe that group survival improves individual survival. To them, a situation where everyone succeeds is automatically better than a situation where only they succeed." Commander Zareth shook his head. "That may work on a primitive world with abundant resources, but in a survival competition." "But that's exactly the point," Dr. Kethray interrupted. "They don't see this as a survival competition. They see it as a problem-solving exercise where the goal is to get everyone through alive. And by that measure, they are succeeding beyond our wildest expectations. Representative Valthus was still studying the technical reports. Dr. Kethrai, can you explain how they consistently outperform species with superior technology and thousands of years more experience? The scientist activated his own display. Because they approach problems differently than we do. Most species specialize, the Korath focus on tactical superiority. We Zephyrians emphasize technological solutions. The Thakari excel at resource management. But humans seem to combine all of these approaches simultaneously. That should make them mediocre. At everything, Zareth protested. Logically, yes. But the evidence suggests they are actually superior at everything. Their tactical thinking rivals the Korath. Their improvised technology surpasses Zephyrian engineering. Their resource management exceeds Thakari efficiency. And their cooperation capabilities are unlike anything we have ever encountered. High Arbiter Quellonox was reviewing the reports from the archivist facility. Dr. Kethrai, what is your assessment of their discovery of the ancient database? The scientist's expression became more serious. That is perhaps the most concerning development. The humans didn't just find the facility by luck. They systematically explored areas that other teams ignored, applied scientific methods that led them directly to the discovery, and then successfully accessed systems that have resisted our best efforts for millennia. And now they have information about our species that predates the Federation, added Council Member Thexara. Information that calls into question many of our basic assumptions about galactic development. Quellonox activated a secure communication channel. Monitor Quextol, bring the human team to the orbital station immediately. We need to question them directly. 3 hours later, Jake Morrison found himself standing in the council chamber with his 11 teammates, facing the most powerful beings in the known galaxy. The aliens looked nervous, which was not something he had expected. Captain Morrison, High Arbiter Quellonox began, we need to discuss your team's performance in the Survival Championship. Jake glanced at Amy Collins, who gave him a slight nod. They had agreed on the transport ship that honesty was their best strategy. We're happy to answer any questions, High Arbiter. We followed all the stated rules and completed every required objective. That is precisely the problem, Quellonox replied. You have not simply completed the objectives. You have exceeded them to a degree that breaks our measurement systems. Commander Zareth stepped forward. Human, explain why you helped competing teams instead of focusing on your own survival. Jake looked genuinely confused by the question. Because they needed help. When people are in trouble, you help them. That's just basic decency. But helping them reduced your chances of winning, Zareth pressed. Did it? Jake asked. Because from where I stand, everyone survived, everyone learned something useful, and everyone is better prepared for future challenges. That sounds like winning to me. Representative Valthus activated a holographic display showing some of Lisa Torres's engineering modifications. How did your engineer improve upon technology that our species spent centuries developing? Lisa. Torres stepped forward. I just looked at the problems differently. Your tools are designed to work in ideal conditions, but the real world isn't ideal. So I modified them to be more adaptable, but you used primitive materials and basic tools. Lisa shrugged. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best ones. You don't always need advanced technology to solve advanced problems. Double quotes. Dr. Kethrai approached Amy Collins. Dr. Collins, your analysis of the archivist database was remarkably thorough. How did you access systems that have remained sealed for thousands of years? Amy looked puzzled. We just applied standard archaeological and computer science techniques. The systems weren't really sealed, they were just dormant. Once we figured out the basic interface protocols, it was mostly a matter of patience and careful analysis, standard techniques. Dr. Kethrai repeated. These techniques allowed you to access information that has been beyond our reach for millennia. Maybe you were overthinking it, Amy suggested. Sometimes the most complex problems have surprisingly simple solutions if you approach them from the right angle. High Arbiter Quelinox was reviewing data on his personal display. Captain Morrison, are you aware that your team has achieved performance statistics that are unprecedented in the 3,000-year history of this competition? Jake nodded. Monitor Quextel mentioned that we were doing well. Doing well? Quelinox's voice rose slightly. You have achieved perfect scores in every measured category while simultaneously helping every other team improve their own performance. This is not doing well. This is completely redefining what we thought was possible. Jake looked around, at his teammates, then back at the assembled aliens. Hi, Arbiter, is there something wrong with performing well? I thought the point was to demonstrate our species' capabilities. The point was to test your capabilities within acceptable parameters, Commander Zareth said. You have performed far beyond acceptable parameters. I'm sorry, Jake said slowly, but I don't understand what you mean by acceptable parameters. We were given challenges and we met them. We were told to survive and we did. We were told to demonstrate our abilities and we have. If our abilities exceed your expectations, isn't that a good thing? The council chamber fell silent. Several of the alien representatives exchanged glances that suggested they were having the same uncomfortable realization. Dr. Cathrai spoke first. Captain Morrison, I don't think you understand the situation. This competition was designed to test species according to established standards of civilized behavior. The emergency council session lasted for 6 hours. Jake Morrison and his team waited in a holding area while the most powerful beings in the galaxy argued about what to do with them. Through the transparent walls, they could see aliens gesturing frantically in displays showing endless streams of data. Well, this is awkward, Danny Ross said, watching a group of Korath military officers arguing with Zephyrian scientists. I think we broke their brain trust. Amy Collins was studying the readings on her portable scanner. Actually, I think we broke something much more important than that. We broke their entire understanding of how species are supposed to develop. Kate Sullivan looked up from her communication device. I'm picking up transmissions from all over the galaxy. Word about our performance is spreading to other worlds. And the reactions are interesting. What kind of reactions? Jake asked. Mixed. Some species are demanding to know why they weren't told about human capabilities. Others are asking for copies of our technical innovations. And a few are requesting direct diplomatic contact with Earth, bypassing the Federation entirely. Lisa. Torres was sketching modifications for some of the alien equipment they had observed. You know what I find interesting? Every alien we've met has been surprised by something we consider completely normal. It's like they've been taught that certain things are impossible. Ben Carter nodded. I noticed that too. When I was treating injuries during the competition, several alien team members were amazed by basic first aid techniques that any human scout would know. Peter Hayes was reviewing their mission reports. It makes you wonder what else they think. Isn't possible that we do every day? The door to their holding area opened and Monitor Quextel entered. The alien looked tired and somewhat confused. The council has reached a decision regarding your participation in the Survival Championship. Jake stood up and, you are hereby graduated from the competition and barred from future participation. The human team exchanged glances. Graduated? Amy asked. The official determination is that your species has demonstrated capabilities that exceed the parameters of the Survival Championship. Therefore, you are considered to have completed the program successfully. Danny Ross started laughing. Wait, are you saying we're being kicked out for being too good at this? That is an oversimplified but essentially accurate summary, Quextel replied stiffly. Jake shook his head in amazement. So we passed the test, but we can't take it again because we passed it too well? The council has determined that human participation would be unfair to other developing species who need the competition for their own advancement. Lisa Torres looked up from her sketching. But what about all the technical innovations we shared? And the cooperative techniques we demonstrated? Wouldn't those help other species advance faster? Quextall paused for a long moment. That is part of the problem. Your innovations and techniques are being studied by multiple species. Some of the younger generation of aliens are beginning to question why their own species accept limitations that humans apparently ignore. Kate Sullivan's communication device started beeping rapidly. Captain, I'm getting a lot of incoming messages. Direct communications from alien worlds that aren't going through the Federation channels. What kind of messages? Kate read from her display. Requests for technical consultations, invitations to visit their worlds, offers of trade partnerships, and questions about human educational methods. It looks like word about our competition performance has spread throughout the galaxy. Monitor Quextall looked uncomfortable. You should not be receiving direct communications from member worlds. All contact is supposed to go through Federation channels. Amy Collins stood up. Monitor Quextall, can I ask you a personal question? The alien nodded cautiously. Have you ever wondered what your species could accomplish if you didn't accept the limitations that the Federation considers normal? Quextall was quiet for a long time. Such thoughts are not encouraged among Federation members? But have you had them anyway? Another long pause. Perhaps Jake realized that their conversation was being recorded for the council review. Monitor Quextall, what happens to us now? Are we supposed to just go back to Earth and pretend this never happened? Hi. Arbiter Quellonox will address that question when he presents the final decision. 20 minutes later, the human team stood once again before the full Galactic Council. The chamber felt different this time. Instead of confident alien leaders, Jake saw beings who looked uncertain and worried. High Arbiter Quellonox activated the central display. Captain Morrison, the Federation Council has reached several important decisions regarding your species. We're listening. First, humanity is hereby granted immediate probationary membership in the Galactic Federation, bypassing the normal 1,000-year evaluation period. Jake felt his team members react with surprise and excitement behind him. That's unexpected, but we appreciate it. Second, humans are permanently barred from participation in the Galactic Survival Championship due to performance capabilities that exceed acceptable parameters. Danny Ross couldn't help himself. So we're advanced enough for membership, but too advanced for the competition that's supposed to test advancement? Quellonox ignored the question. Third, all human technical innovations demonstrated during the competition will be classified and restricted to prevent disruption of established technological development patterns. Lisa Torres stepped forward. High Arbiter, are you saying you're going to suppress the innovations that could help other species? We are saying that rapid technological change can be destabilizing to galactic peace. Amy Collins raised her hand. High Arbiter, what about the information we discovered in the Archivist database? The historical records that show how species capabilities have changed over time. The council chamber became very quiet. That information is being reviewed by appropriate specialists. Reviewed or buried? Amy pressed. Commander Zareth stood up. Human, you will not question the council's handling of sensitive information. Jake looked around the chamber at the alien faces. Some looked angry, others looked worried, but several looked curious. High Arbiter, can I ask what the Federation is afraid of? The Federation fears nothing, Quellonox replied quickly. Then why are you restricting information and innovations that could benefit everyone? Why are you worried about species exceeding expectations? Why does our success threaten you? Dr. Kethrai stepped forward from the observer area. High Arbiter. May I speak? Quellonox nodded reluctantly. Captain Morrison, the Federation is not afraid of your success. The Federation is afraid of what your success implies about our own limitations. The chamber erupted in protest from various alien representatives, but Dr. Kethrai continued. For 3,000 years, we have built our civilization on the assumption that each species has natural limitations that define their role in galactic society. Your species challenges that assumption. If humans can exceed multiple limitations simultaneously, it suggests that other species might be capable of more than we have allowed them to believe. Dr. Kethra, Quellonox warned, you are discussing Matters beyond your authority. I am discussing the truth, the scientist replied. And the truth is that the humans have exposed the fact that our entire system is designed to maintain artificial limitations rather than encourage genuine advancement. Jake saw his opportunity. High Arbiter, what if we offered to help? Not to disrupt your system, but to help other species discover their own unrealized capabilities? Absolutely not, Commander Zareth declared. Human influence on member species could destabilize the entire Federation. But Jake noticed that several of the younger alien representatives were looking interested in his proposal. What if it was voluntary? What if species could choose whether they wanted human assistance in developing their capabilities? Kate Sullivan's communication device began beeping again. Captain, I'm getting more messages. This time from individual aliens, not governments. They're asking about the educational techniques we used, the cooperative methods we demonstrated, and the problem-solving approaches we employed. Amy Collins smiled. It sounds like word is spreading whether the Federation wants it to or not. High Arbiter Quelanox looked around the chamber at his fellow council members. Many of them appeared to be engaged in whispered conversations with their aides. The carefully controlled meeting was beginning to slip away from them. The human team will be transported back to Earth immediately, Quelanox announced. This session is concluded. As they were escorted from the chamber, Jake heard fragments of conversations between alien representatives. Some were angry about the Council's decisions, others were excited about the human innovations, and several were quietly making plans to establish direct contact with Earth. Back on the transport ship, the human team reviewed what had just happened. So, we won the competition, got humanity into the Federation, and were banned from future competitions because we were too good, Jake summarized. Don't forget that we also accidentally started what might be a galactic revolution, Amy added. Did you see how many of the younger aliens were taking notes during our conversation with Dr. Kethra? Lisa Torres was still working on her technical sketches. I don't think this is over. Too many species saw what we accomplished.